When I say the name Thomas Edison, what do you picture? For a lot of us, it's this image of the Wizard of Menlo Park, right? A lone genius who conjures the light bulb out of thin air like a magic trick. But what if it wasn't magic at all? What if there was a method, something repeatable behind all that magic?
Well, then you read a quote like this, from someone who actually worked with him. This doesn't sound like a wizard waiting for a lightning bolt of inspiration. It sounds like a man driven by a relentless, almost obsessive work ethic that just completely ignored how the rest of the world worked. So today, we're going to peel back the myth to find the man and the method that really powered his world-changing inventions.
So here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll tackle that myth of the wizard by looking at how he was forged by curiosity and silence. Then, we'll get into how he didn't just invent a bulb, he invented an entire world for it. We'll also see how he actually had a pretty good time failing. And finally, we'll uncover what Edison's real legacy is.
All right, let's dive in. To really understand the inventor, you have to go back and understand the kid. Edison's youth wasn't just a bunch of cute stories. It was the furnace where his most powerful traits were forged.
From a super young age, this kid was driven by a curiosity that was, well, it was kind of dangerous. He tried to hatch goose eggs by sitting on them himself. He nearly drowned in a canal, was almost smothered to death in a grain elevator, and one time he burned his family's barn to the ground just to see what would happen. He was publicly whipped for that one. This wasn't just a kid messing around, this was R&D, just in its earliest, most chaotic form. And that mindset, that way of seeing the world, it even applied to what most of us would see as a huge disadvantage. An incident in his childhood left him mostly deaf, but he didn't see it as a disability. No way. He actually reframed it as his superpower. His deafness became the shield, It let him tune out all the noise and distraction of the world and lock in with an intense focus that became one of his greatest weapons as an inventor. And that unique focus is what let him see the bigger picture, which was absolutely key for his next big challenge. See, the simple story is, Edison invented the light bulb. But the reality is so much more impressive. He knew a single bulb by itself was basically a useless little glass toy. He had to invent the entire world for that bulb to live in.
I mean, just look at this list. The sheer scope of his thinking is mind-boggling. The bulb was just one tiny piece of the puzzle. To make it work, he also had to come up with a powerful dynamo to generate the electricity, a whole network of underground wires, safety fuses, light sockets with on-off switches, even the electric meter to measure how much juice you were using. He wasn't inventing a product, he was building an entire industry from absolutely nothing.
And one of his most brilliant moves, one that almost nobody talks about, was solving the distribution problem. The obvious way to wire a city was this tree system, right? But it would have taken a truly insane amount of super expensive copper. Electric light would have been a toy for the mega rich. So Edison came up with his feeder system, a much smarter grid that delivered power evenly while using way less copper.
And we're not talking about small savings here. The scale of this is just massive. To light just one small district in New York, the old way would have needed over 800,000 pounds of copper. Can you even picture that? Edison's system slashed that by more than 80%. That innovation, that bit of systems thinking, is what made electric light affordable for everyone. It wasn't just smart engineering, it was revolutionary economics. But here's the thing. For every brilliant success like that, there were countless failures. And if you really want to understand Edison's method, you can't just look at his aha moments. You have to look at how he dealt with the darkness, when his biggest, grandest plans completely fell apart. For almost a decade, Edison went all in. He poured his energy, his brain power, and literally his entire fortune into this huge project up in the mountains of New Jersey. He was trying to pioneer a new magnetic process to get iron out of low-grade ore. He built the whole town around it, invented these massive new machines. He really thought this was going to be his masterpiece.
And it failed. It failed catastrophically. New, rich iron deposits were discovered somewhere else, and just like that, his complicated process was obsolete. He lost everything. Over $2 million, which was an astronomical amount of money back then. His entire fortune gone.
But his reaction to losing everything? This is what tells you all you need to know about the man. He just dusted himself off and said, well, it's all gone, but we had a hell of a good time spending it. Can you believe that? For Edison, the process itself, the problem solving, the learning, the struggle, that was its own reward. Failure wasn't the end. It was just really expensive data collection.
So why does all this matter? Because when you put all the pieces together, the intense curiosity, the systems thinking, that incredible resilience, you see that Edison's real legacy, isn't a list of 1,093 patents. It's the modern, electrified world that he methodically built, piece by piece. This was never just about cool gadgets. His work literally created entirely new industries that completely reshaped the economy. By the early 1900s, his systems were behind hundreds of thousands of jobs in lighting, railways, manufacturing, you name it. He didn't just light up the world, he put the world to work in a completely new way.
So the whole wizard thing, it was a myth. A great story, but a myth. The reality was a man with a formula. And that formula was built on a foundation of relentless childhood curiosity he never lost. A rare gift for seeing the entire system instead of just the object. And an almost joyful resilience that saw failure as just another step in the process.
And that kind of leaves us with a question for our own time, doesn't it? We live in an age that celebrates instant success, the viral hit, the overnight sensation. But Edison's story is a reminder that real, world-changing innovation is almost never a single flash of genius. It's slow, it's grinding, and it's often full of frustration. Maybe the real lesson from the Wizard of Menlo Park isn't how to have a brilliant idea, but how to find the grit to chase it through 1,000 failures.